All right, here is my final presentation for contract drafting. All right, it's for the final project, and let's get started. All right, so to begin, we're just gonna start with the basic job details. All right, so the job title is pretty simple. It's just an esports coach. So I took it as I am acting as a program owner of an esports program, and I'm looking for a coach for one of my teams. All right, so the basic elements, parties to the agreement would be Queer Esports, all right, which means Queer is like love in French. So it's Love Esports, and the person would be John Doe. So I'm the director, my program, Esports, and whoever is applying for this job. All right. So the consideration would be it's the difference between, or it's what's required of them to do and how much they're getting paid for it. So what we came up with was that the person is required to compete in at least 7 competitions within a year of the day they were hired. So say they were hired on March 5th, 2024, they have until March 5th, 2025 in order to complete at least 7 competitions throughout that time frame. The time for performance would be a year, and they would also need to attend at least 12 esports events and actively recruit. So the way esports works, pretty much these coaches will go to events, and that's how they recruit. Kind of like how for football, they have like combines where all these recruiters will go and watch all these players play. It's kind of the same thing. All right, so basic elements continued. All right, so the location would be in Florida, and then the state governing the contract would also be Florida. The fiduciary duty, I will be acting for myself. It's my company, so I'll be doing this for my best interest. And then the statute of frauds pretty much is the written document or written form of the contract. So whether that's like me listing everything that I am requiring, everything that's a part of the contract, and then both of us signing, that will be a thing simply to avoid any legal issue or misinformation that could happen or come up in the future. All right, next we have the performance clauses. So the first one is exclusivity. All right, so exclusivity is basically where the employee cannot work or help or do anything with any other company while they're under that contract. So, for instance, if I was to work at SEU for a year and in my contract it says that there's an exclusivity clause, I wouldn't be able to work for FSU or Polk State for the time frame of that contract. So for me, I wrote the employee is unable to work with any other university or esports program within the state of Florida. Okay, so that's while they're working here. And if they wanted to, they could. The second part for exclusivity I have is they also cannot be a coach for any other team. And I say that because in the first part, I said that they don't have to work with any esports program within the state of Florida. And if they would like to, they can work with like another esports program in Texas or in California, but they're just unable to be coaches outside of the US or any other team at all. So if they wanted to be a manager for a coach in California, that's completely fine. If they wanted to be a director of some sort for another team or another, like they can do all of that, just not a coach. I would want them to be a coach for only my team. Morality. All right. So my company or program would be a Christian program. So obviously not everyone would be required to be Christian, but a sense of professionalism, no profanity, treating players and other staff with like ultimate respect, just to make sure that we are all on the same page and we're all treating each other well. So that would be my morality clause. All right, force majeure. I don't know if that's how you say that, but I think that is. So force majeure. Basically, it was explained as, say, some kind of unforeseeable circumstance happened, like a tornado or a volcano, literally anything that could cause something to hinder this contract in any way, then there's a clause that can say what would happen to the contract if something like that were to happen. So in my case, I said if there is some sort of unforeseeable circumstance of that nature and it causes a stoppage of our contract, then the time frame to complete the duties or the responsibilities of that contract will be extended. So I'd say will be extended for about 4 months, 4 to 5 months or so. I'll give them a chance to make up what was lost, pretty much. So termination. So what can terminate this contract? So I'm the only one that can terminate the contract as the basically CEO of this program. Okay. And then what can terminate the contract? I can terminate it due to performance. If there's a lack of performance, if this was something that I, said, hey, I want you to work for me. And they were like, hey, word. And it's not working for either of us. And we both agree that this isn't working. We can terminate the contract together. And if there's also a breach of the contract of any kind, then that is also up for termination. Non-compete clause. So the non-compete pretty much is it's a contract signed that states that after working for a company, say they finish my contract for 1 year, they have to go another year without working for any competing program or any competing school of the same nature. So for this contract, I said that after the contract is up, you may not work for any competing program for the next 6 months. All right. Esports isn't that intense right now as like traditional sports. So I know traditional sports, you put like maybe a year or two, but for esports, I think 6 months would suffice. All right. And then the non-disclosure. So the information that you share with the company that you're working for, after you sign that contract, you are unable to share that information with anyone at all, like outside of that company. So you need to keep pretty much all of that to yourself. It is contracted by like a certain time frame. So for me, I said that the information we share should be confidential for a minimum of 1 year. I say that because in esports, if anything, information is more important than somebody working for something else or for another program, because we come up with strategies and all of these things that we don't want to share with other teams and schools. And so in order to keep that confidential for 1 year should be enough. All right. So then the last question was, can we take any legal issues to court, or are we doing it through an ADR? An ADR is basically, it's a much cheaper way to solve any dispute, and we can do it more, we can kind of figure out the problem instead of leaving it in somebody else's hands, kind of. So the last question was whether or not any dispute that we have may be taken to court, or if we're going to have an ADR. So an ADR basically stands for an alternative dispute resolution, I believe. And so basically what that looks like is, instead of going to court in order to figure something out, we have an arbiter figure it out for us. And we have more leeway in what we can decide on how to resolve this issue. So for me, my contract will have an ADR clause, meaning that we'll conclude any dispute through arbitration.